Welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. It's a pleasure to be with you. And by the way, somebody wrote in to comment on the fact that I use a little segment of Bill Clinton in the open to the program. It's one in which he expresses the concern that we can't have illegal aliens just flooding into the country. I only use that soundbite in the open to remind you that even Billy Clinton thought it was a bad idea to have illegal aliens. But then again, his point of view is kind of fungible. It changed as the needs of the party and his own personal needs changed. So he did whatever was politically expedient at the time. Some of us have values, and other people, well, their point of view blows in the wind like a weather vane. On the phone with me right now, Frank Gaffney, who has a solid set of values, the founder and president of the Center for Security Policy. Frank, welcome back, and it was good to see you in person at CPAC last week. Hey, Frank.
It was always, it was great to be with you, Lars. Thanks so much for having me on then and having me back.
Very good. I want to talk to you about Broward County in a moment, but let's start. You point out that Daniel Horowitz has been warning about how judges overreach, but you make an important point that this isn't just about specific cases before the federal courts, that if with a sufficiently overreaching federal judiciary, we literally don't have control of the country anymore, and that elections almost become, not all that important anymore because the judges will simply take away what the voters have decided to change, or they will add back what the voters have decided to get rid of.
Yeah, this is really not my insight. I have to give credit to Daniel Horowitz, who's an extraordinarily brilliant commentator and author. He's got a terrific book about judicial tyranny. And his insight, which I've just amplified in a little commentary of my own, Lars, is if you, in fact, allow federal judges not only to exercise dominion over their own district, this is federal judges at what's called the district court level, but to make their rulings, which have increasingly, as you've noticed, I'm sure, become simple exercises in political, manipulation rather than anything remotely related to the Constitution, whether it's on, DACA, the immigration pause, the transgenders in the military, on and on. These judges are actually now imposing their fiat nationwide. And the effect is, as Daniel says, if you let them get away with this, they are negating the Trump victory in the election, the will of the people, the votes that were counted and made him president, in favor of simply perpetuating the policies that these particular, by the way, Obama-appointed judges most often prefer, namely the policies of the previous government, which was pretty soundly rejected by the American people when they were offered in Hillary Clinton a third Obama term. They're getting it from these judges.
Yeah, Daniel Horowitz in the quote you pulled said, the courts have granted Obama a third term. The thing that so many liberals wished, can't we have a third term of Barack Obama? And the rest of us said, heck no, you can't have a third term of Barack Obama. But as you say, the courts have given a third term because if the deep state couldn't get Hillary, then they were going to get the next best thing, Donald Trump with a court system that subverts his policies and continues the policies of the previous administration.
Yeah, well, this is in a way the deep state too. I mean, these are judges who have now been given, to some extent, I'm sorry to say, by not only the appellate courts, like the notorious Ninth, but also by the Supreme Court, considerable latitude in exercising this kind of judicial overreach. And I think Daniel's absolutely right to call him out on it. David Bratt, a man I'm sure your listeners are familiar with because he was the guy who displaced Eric Cantor, one of those giant killers, I think they call him, when Cantor was the majority leader of the United States House of Representatives. David Bratt, a very smart, relatively young member of the United States House of Representatives, is offered legislation saying, wait a minute, confine what these judges are doing, even if it's misruling, to their own districts. They're not allowed to make their rulings nationally binding. I think it's a great idea.
I think it's a fantastic idea because now we have lower courts deciding that an illegal program created by the previous president, DACA, is to be held in place until, I guess, and unless the other case, the other court case against it, makes its way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, we're not going to review the one that's before us right now. Let me ask you about Broward County, because you've suggested that there are others who ought to be investigated in addition to Scott Israel, the sheriff of Broward County, who's running around saying that it's not even his responsibility when his deputies fail to save lives.
Yeah, there's a guy, I believe his name is Nazar Hamza. I'm going from memory here, Lars, but he is a senior official in an organization that we've talked about a lot, the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CARE, as it's known. What is largely unknown is that the federal government proved in court that the Council on American Islamic Relations was established by what is now a designated terrorist organization known as Hamas. And it was put into place for two purposes. One, to raise funds for Hamas, now again, a designated terrorist organization, which it does, and to engage in political warfare against the United States. So CARE is hardly the kind of group you'd like anywhere near law enforcement, let alone to have this character serving as a deputy sheriff to this fellow Scott Israel, the sheriff of Broward County, who has covered himself in glory, shall we say, in recent days in the aftermath of this shooting at the high school in Parkland. It's really unbelievable when you add on top of it that at a moment when it seems pretty clear that the sheriff's deputies in Broward County have not been getting the training they need. Notably, they wouldn't go in and stop the shooter when the shooting was going on. This guy has been traipsing around not just Broward County, but the larger state of Florida, training, including providing weapons training to jihadist mosques in the state of Florida. I mean, this is lunacy. The argument at the very least is, well, he needs to help stop shooters coming into the mosques. Well, you'd think that would apply to schools too, wouldn't you? But no, in Broward County, schools are gun-free zones and anybody can bring in guns and shoot them up, it seems. But in mosques, we're actually training people who are as likely, frankly, to use those guns in acts of jihad as they are in defending their mosques against some putative Islamophobic threat.
By the way, Frank, I want to throw a theory at you and see what you can do with it at the Center for Security Policy. You've been warning us about the coming wave of Sharia. You know, we've already seen it in other countries where there are entire parts of, say, Paris that are off limits to the police, where the Muslims say, we will take care of justice here. Let me tell you a thing I just, and maybe this has occurred to you already, but I just thought of this the other day. We now have effectively police no-go zones in America's schools. The Promise program that Scott Israel is so high on, where the schools say, when a crime happens in our schools, when a student assaults another student, let us handle it internally. Do you realize that we are now doing in the schools, without regard to religion, the same kind of thing that larger Muslim communities are doing around the world, where they say, don't come to our neighborhood. If there's a rape, if there's an assault, if there's a robbery, we will deal with it through Sharia law. Here, we're being prepped for that because we're now being told that crimes can happen inside a school and that we're not going to have the local police come. It'll be handled by government workers who are in no way, shape, or form equipped to deal with that kind of law enforcement issue. Frank Gaffney is the founder and president of the Center for Security Policy, and you're listening to The Lars Larson Show.